it's lovely to meet you. What I first wanted to ask was what's changed since you first came here to now, Talbot Heath?
Well, the big change is when I came for an interview here, I got a taxi at Bournemouth West Station, and the whole of that area there with the flagpole and various other things there was all flowers and trees and shrubs, so I couldn't see the front door of the school. Now I realise that you've got to get rid of quite a lot of the shady places because you've got young girls. So that's the big change. And of course the sports hall wasn't there.
Yes.
The swimming pool wasn't there. We used to go to Stokewood Road in buses, which I had to do the bills because in those early days at here, the boarding houses were filled, 160 girls, 3 really good boarding houses, and I always had to do bills, anything to do with sport. I had to do the bills, and the buses used to come, and everybody used to swim, and they all had to pay a small sum each time they went on the buses. I think probably, looking around, there were some bicycle sheds over there, and they've gone now. The Creative Arts building, which has just been bulldozed down, I gather, that wasn't there. It was just a wild land. Oh, and here, this area where you can see the top of an air raid shelter,
Yes.
that was all heather and scrub, and the boarders used to use that path, and eventually it was decided the scrub should be taken away, and I came in the morning after the men had been working, and the fire engines were here, and there was smoke going up like this in wisps. And what had happened, the men who came to get rid of all this scrub, they set alight to quite a lot of things, and underneath there is peat, and peat burns underground. So overnight it was smouldering and then was catching a light, I gather. That was something I hadn't expected. That was well after I came to the school.
Do you feel the main building has changed much, or is it still very similar?
No, the main building hasn't. Oh yes, it had. When I first came, the kitchen wasn't really tied up to the rest of the building. In other words, when they started the building before the war, they hadn't finished it. And the second quadrangle was just a piece of grass and a building there where they had lunch, and I think eventually somebody put a shelter over. But it was decided that they should have a bazaar, 3-day bazaar, to get this last bit of the buildings done. And when I first came, every Friday afternoon, the girls had a period for doing bazaar work, and they didn't have a lesson, they just had to get on with making things. And the bazaar was held down in the town hall. Behind the town hall, a building which was useful, but the town hall decided they wanted to make it into offices. It had been a place where you could have a postcard fair, or somebody could book it for various events. And they had a 3-day fair. I think it was Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Somebody came to open each day, and one of the people who opened was an old girl, Dilys Pole. She was a film critic and very well known. And she did one of the days. The Mayor of Bournemouth did another opening. And I can't remember, I think it might have been somebody like the Chairman of the Governors did the third one. But there was also a setup whereby a new member of staff came in. She was the domestic bursar, and it was decided to do things in the kitchen during the summer term. So every single day, instead of the girls all being able to go and have food in the dining room and the boarders went over there to have their food, they had to stay in their form room. And I remember they had pilchards and pilchards and pilchards, but it was difficult because trolleys had to come to every form, and they ate the food off the trolley, took it into the form room, and it worked well, but it's not easy for the domestic bursar. That took place the whole of one term. What was the art studio, which is pulled down now, isn't it? What did it become?
Do you mean over
yes,
there?
There were two separate places and they were called the art room.
Oh, that's actually music now, I think.
Oh, it's extra to music now, is it?
Yes.
Yes, but when this new building is up and running, the art studio, I gather, is upstairs somewhere now,
it's
isn't
upstairs,
it?
Yes.
Yes. The headmistress's room has always changed. When a new headmistress comes, the furnishings are still the same. The chairs, the table. For instance, Dr. Macpherson had the table like that, and she sat in this chair at the end. Whereas now, well, if the head calls you in, where does she sit?
She usually sits on the sofa, or she's sitting by the desk.
Oh, she's got a desk here.
Yes.
Or she could sit here. So if you were a girl coming in, you wouldn't expect to sit down, would you? Or would you?
Well, if you're having an interview or something, we'd usually sit there, and then she'd sit here.
Yes. So this has changed, but you see the furnishings as such, there used to be a coal fire here, because the man who was the caretaker, and they lived up here, he and his wife, and they had to make a coal fire here first thing in the morning and one in the staff room. And older members of staff used to come in on very cold days, and they'd come in like this, and then they'd lift their skirts like this and warm their rears. But they were very nice people, the staff then, and there were hardly any cars. And after the first term, I said to my father, I've got this bicycle. I said to my father, I lived up in the north, in Northumberland, and I said to father, I've joined a badminton club, and it's like a switchback, like that. And so father said, well, we better get you a car. We'll start off with a second-hand one. And I had this second-hand Austin, and it was 350 miles to home, but it was a tough car, very tough, and it had a blind that you could pull which went up at the back of the car. There was a window like that, and it had a running board. When you opened the door, there was a bit of rubber, which they called the running board. There were no heaters or anything like that, and I used to come back, especially in the winter, with boots on, because it was so cold, and Northumberland always had snow. And then there was one car, I remember, belonging to a member of staff called Anna Wells, and she went off to be a headmistress, and I'm not sure of the name of the car, something like a Bugatti. It had a huge bonnet, and she had a flying cap, with goggles and whatnot. And she used to come, and she was allowed to park it right next door to the front door. That was the staff car park. And for most of my time here, my car was 2 away from the headmistress's car, which was on the left-hand side of the main door. I was allowed to park there because I was always coming and going in the car, activities and various things. But the buildings haven't changed at all, and they've done extremely well.
Yes.
You know, in 1935 things were really built to last. And the woodwork on the doors, especially at the hall, there was beautiful woodwork, and it had to be changed because it was fire hazard.
Oh.
I'm not sure whether the head has got the original. I think she probably has. But that had to be done, and that was a pity. No girls were ever allowed to run. I've seen some girls this afternoon running. Nobody bothers, do they now? Because it was thought to be dangerous, and they were not allowed to talk. So they moved swiftly. I think that was what was probably said. The one air raid shelter has been opened.
Yes.
But I often I've been in that one.
Oh.
And that one. And it was all to do with broken chairs. And if I went anywhere and there was a broken chair or one with only 3 legs, I knew that it had to go to the caretaker. And sometimes people just stuck it out in the corridor. But if I went into a form room, there's a broken chair, I used to bring it along. And we actually he opened the door, certainly into that one, and I've been in that one. There is still that one there, isn't there?
I think so, but I don't think that's open anymore.
This is the one that's open.
Yes, yes.
Yes. They used to do, the staff during the war had to do fire watching on the top, and they had rotors because there were a few air raids in Bournemouth, not very many, and of course Talbot Heath, I think they did afternoons, and they had to share the school with St Anne's Convent from Southampton. And when we had the centenary, they sent a telegram. That was the only contact I knew.